Wankel engine, wankel in there.
Hello, Wobbly Phil here. Let's get on with the video. Yes, it's true, I am a little bit obsessed with Wankel Rotary engines. I've made videos about the Norton Wankel, the Van Veen Wankel, and given honourable mentions to the Suzuki RE5, the Hercules DKW Wankel, and even Yamaha's attempt at having a Wankel. But what I hadn't fully understood until recently was that BSA Triumph spent a lot of time and resource exploring Wankels in the late 1960s and early 1970s as part of its desperate and eventually unsuccessful bid to bail out its sinking ship. The boffins bashed away at it for several years, so what stopped them pulling it off? In the early 1970s, things at BSA Triumph were running about as smoothly as some of their older motorcycle designs. The company was in debt to Barclays Bank, no sniggering at the back, to the tune of £10 million, and with interest rates then running at around 10%, that meant handing over the shiny side of £1 million every year to the merchant bankers just to keep running on the spot, as well as playing host to hordes of management consultants who were doing what management consultants usually do. One or two folk at the firm were keen to push the idea of rotary engines. Infected with the Wankel virus, they promoted it as cheap to produce, simple and reliable, declaring it would soon make piston engines look like the steam engines of the 1700s. This rattled a few cages, not least amongst the senior suits, who began to wonder why they were spending so much time and effort developing new piston engines. By 1973, a prototype had been produced. It was a single-rotor, air-cooled engine with a carb rear of the rotor, meaning that it was sucking in a lot of hot air. This caused problems with overheating and burnt-out engines. The only way to resolve the issue, if BSA Triumph were going to be in the race for a Wankel-engined motorcycle, was to go back to square one, which meant more development money, something that the company was sorely lacking. As if Wankel wasn't enough to get your inner schoolboy giggling, I'm now compelled to mention NSU. You can't get NSU from a Wankel, but you had to license your Wankel from NSU if you wanted to go into full-scale production. That came at a cost. To be precise, it was £54,000 for 0.5 to 20 horsepower, £117,000 for 20 to 35 horsepower, and £78,000 for 35 to 50 horsepower. The company eventually opted for a license to produce engines that made between 35 and 60 ponies at 5,000 RPM at a cost of £129,000. That's more than 1.5 million simoleons in 2025 money. In the background, the men from the ministry were now getting involved too and lobbying for a merger between BSA Triumph and Norton under the chairmanship of Dennis Poor, which eventually came to pass. Such was the culture of the 1970s that even a right-of-centre Conservative government couldn't keep its heavy-handed paws off meddling with things they knew little of, which went about as well for the country as you might expect.
As Prime Minister, I want to speak to you simply and plainly about the grave emergency now facing our country. We shall have to postpone some of the hopes and aims we have set ourselves for expansion and for our standard of living.
Against this background and a global oil crisis which saw prices increase by 400%, what was by now Norton Villiers Triumph, under poor management, gritted its NHS dentures and got down to the task of making its Wankel bike a reality. Opting for contra-rotating twin rotors with a nominal 600cc capacity each, the plan was to make a 60-horsepower machine to comply with the upper limit of the license they had purchased from NSU. For a while, the company had been working on ways to make chain drives less bothersome, and its new rotary baby was to be fitted with shaft drive, potentially linked to an automatic torque converter, which had been offered by the British company that made automatic transmissions for the Mini, and who were also offering to help with the development costs of the new Wankel machine. The biggest technical issue to solve was cooling, and in case they needed to opt for liquid cooling, the designs were drawn up allowing for an easy change should the air cooling nut prove to be uncrackable, all served up with lashings of soothing oil. Inevitably, the designs, I'm not sure about the engines, leaked and created a bit of a sensation, not least across the pond, where dealerships and showrooms had been desperate for a bit of good news on the product front. But by now MVT was going under, dragged down by the multiple millstones of misguided management, malcontent unions, and a government that was no longer interested in subsidising the British motorcycle industry. Before anything tangible could come of the Wankel bike, NVT had gone bosoms skyward. But wait, that's not the end of the story. The rights to the BSA Triumph Wankel were sold on by MVT's receivers, to Dennis Poor no less, who apparently got to cherry-pick the best of the remaining scraps, and it resurfaced as a Norton Wankel. A few production bikes were sold, and in its much modified racing guise, it pumped out an astonishing 135 bhp. It was wielded as a track weapon to great effect by the likes of Rocket Ron Haslam and Steve Hislop in the late 1980s and early 1990s. If you can bear the thought of even more schoolboy wankeling from me, I made a video about the Norton Wankel a while back. I'll pop the link in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing to let YouTube know we're doing something right here at 3 Phils. Thank you.